Tokyo's finest. Imamada take Tokyo's finest. Imamada take. Hey YouTube, so this is Simon. I'm trying out my second video now. Going to Japan today again. I'll just turn the volume down a little bit. This is nice background music. M-Flo, bit of an old track, but I've got it as vinyl, sounds pretty good. So yeah, second story I just wanted to talk about from Japan today. This is actually going back a bit as well now, but it's they occasionally do these polls for people who live in Japan. And one of the poll questions that they had the other day was, what behavior by train passengers bugs you the most? Now, when you first come to Japan, especially if you come to Tokyo, one of the big cities, the public transportation is the first thing that you sort of is your first main significant interaction with lots of Japanese people in a situation that isn't really controlled. And you get to experience a lot of different culture there, and obviously things which sort of stand out. Your first sort of culture shock is probably in this sort of situation. So it's interesting. This question was asked to people who read Japan Today, and there were 71 comments in response up until the present time. And there's a lot there, and I think pretty much everyone who's been in Japan and used trains, maybe in trains in other countries as well, I don't know, you can give me a response and tell me if it's similar. But in Japan, yeah, there were a lot of common themes, which were, for example, the first one is that, well, Japanese have this amazing ability to sleep on trains, and not just sleep when they're sitting down, but to sleep even when they're standing up. And I used to live far in the suburbs, and that's a skill I had to learn to do as well. But that was a bit freaky. So yeah, learning how to do that, just so that you stay enough awake that you can stay on your feet, but just so you can doze off and try to catch some time sleeping. But the other thing that you get is, especially as you live out in the suburbs, people who can't quite sit up straight and they can't quite control themselves. You can see them kind of falling down and standing up again, and falling down and standing up again when they're asleep. And people who kind of can't stay straight, and they keep leaning over to the side and falling and sleeping on someone's shoulder. And this is when you learn how to hit people in the shoulder a little bit hard. Or if it's a nice looking girl, sometimes it can actually be kind of enjoyable, but a bit weird because we're not, of course, used to that much physical contact. The flip side of that also being that, of course, people bump into you, crash into you, push you, shove you, step on your feet. Never apologize for it, in Tokyo anyway. Some other comments which came up that people didn't like, behavior by passengers on trains. One was that, for example, people do all their makeup, they have their meals, and this is even when the train's pretty crowded. So that's annoying to some people. Another big thing is with the priority seat. So the whole concept, of course, I come from New Zealand, so when someone comes on a train, you stand up. If they're elderly, or if they've got children, or even if they're a lady, it's kind of our culture, of course, that men stand up for the women. In Japan, it seems to very much be the reverse. Women will stand up for men, if anything. And there's also the whole thing that, for example, when you go to the priority seats, which are set aside for disabled, pregnant, elderly people, people will sit down there, put on their headphones, and pretend to be asleep. I've been there with a broken leg, for example, once, and wasn't able to sit down, just because people are pretending to be asleep or not to notice you. So everyone's kind of in their own space, and they don't want to be disturbed. There's other various things. There's personal hygiene issues, of course. You're very close to people, and sometimes they don't eat very good smelling food, and sometimes they think they can floss their teeth and do whatever on trains when they're right up pressed against your face, which can be quite disturbing. People trying to force themselves to sit in a gap when there's no space, or conversely people who sit across two seats instead of one, when it's generally set out in Tokyo so that 7 people can sit in a row of seats. Amongst this, one complaint by a lot of people that I didn't really get was the moving through carriages. I mean, I can understand, I guess, if the train's very crowded and it's hard to get through, but there's some people who complain about people who move from carriage to carriage when they should just do it on the platform when they get out. The reason that people move through, of course, is to get to the carriage nearest their exit when they get off the train, which saves 20 seconds. So there's the valid question as to why they need to bother, but it doesn't really bother me. It's something which I do. I like to save a bit of time. One of the Japanese, or pro-Japan, I'm not sure if he's Japanese or not, Nigel Boy, he made a complaint that the worst manners happened during the Yamanote line Halloween party, which happens every Halloween, gaijins basically go on the Yamanote line in their Halloween costumes and cause trouble, which is a fair enough complaint. But and the other complaint, well, my main complaint is actually, one thing I've never been able to understand with Japanese people is that they're so fussy about cleanliness and public hygiene, but they have no problems puking on trains, vomiting, throwing up. Me, I can't do that. But yeah, you know, I try to. I've only been in that situation of feeling like I'm going to vomit from drinking too much once on a train, and I managed to hold it, get out of the train, get onto the platform, throw up in a garbage bin. But people just puke in the middle of train carriages here in Japan late at night. They don't even hold it or anything, and I don't get that. And I've seen that more than once, and it's quite unpleasant, especially when it's very crowded. And people can't get off the train because it's too far to go home and it's the last train and someone's just puked and everyone's trying to push down to one end of the carriage. It's what I imagine it must have used to be like in the gas chambers, I guess, when the gas came out and you hear about people pushing on one side of the room. Well, I guess I can't say it's exactly the same as that, but it's something like it anyway. People definitely try to get away from that. Just some other topics as well. Japan Today did a renewal lately, which is interesting. There's a big thread going on there about whether people approved of the changes and what they wanted fixed. And to the credit of the people at JT, the new people who are operating it, they did respond in most of those cases. The one thing which I really miss, though, is that it's hard to tell what kind of movement is going on with different threads during the day, and that page has now disappeared. They've got recent comments, so you can see what people have commented for the last 15 minutes or whatever. But I'd actually like to see during the day what kind of threads, what threads are being commented on. Because I don't necessarily care about the most popular threads. I like to see, you know, the obscure threads or threads which are kind of interesting to me that someone's put a comment on. Because usually I won't bother reading a news article unless someone's already said a comment, and to see if I agree or not. And, you know, yeah, when I've got some time responding. So that's something I'd like to see come back. But once again, that was just a compilation of interesting comments which I think are very relevant and ring very true for anyone who lives in Japan. So yeah, what do you think? Post a video response, post a comment in the response, what things bother you the most on trains, and yeah, basically again, if you're living in Japan, you'd like to get into vlogging, whatever, again, feel free to hook up, video respond with each other. Let's try to get some sort of dialogue going, and look forward to hearing your thoughts. Peace.
Stop the tape. This kid needs to be locked away.